hours of activism.
There's certain fights, if we don't engage, they win. This is a fundamental question of who we are.
And delivering your daily dose of comedy.
Donald Trump, when he had his physical, they had his blood pressure, and mine is higher than his. Oh. And the irony is mine is higher because of him.
From the blue wave.
We flipped. Enough seats to take control of the House. We control the House.
To 2020 and beyond. This is the Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM Progress, Channel 127.
And welcome to the Dean Obeidallah Show. We're live here Tuesday, January 7th. As always, I'm here to be your MBFF. I'm on Twitter all the time, folks. If you're on Twitter, you know I'm there, at Dean Obeidallah, waiting for you to be my friend on Twitter. So, a lot to cover tonight. I'm happy Stephen Colbert is back after being off for weeks, and I want to play a joke or two of his, not just because they're funny, but because they are talking about the issues of a potential war with Iran, and they're informing people of the facts. And I say this time and time again. What Stephen Colbert is doing is reaching an audience that might not watch MS or CNN or listen to this show. They want to get laughs. And there's Colbert informing them of the facts, and all the facts surrounding Trump's strike are damning. So here is first, and this is completely true, folks. This is not an exaggeration. If you didn't hear about this, Donald Trump at his hotel last week was bragging to guests that he knew something big was going to happen with Iran. Here's Colbert on that. Clip number one, please.
Presidents usually inform something called the Gang of Eight, which is the top Democrat and Republican in the House and Senate, as well as the chairs of the ranking members of each chamber's intelligence committees. But top Democratic leaders in Congress received no advance notification of the strike. Yeah, they didn't need to know, though, because they weren't staying at a Trump hotel. Apparently, days before the strike, Trump roamed the halls of Mar-a-Lago, telling friends that he was working on a big response to the Iranian regime that they would be hearing about very soon. Can you imagine checking into that hotel? Okay, here's your keys right there. The pool is on the left. There's a fitness center on 7. And if you make your way down to the courtyard, there's an old man giving away state secrets. Tip him. You want to tip him. Just tip him.
And if you didn't hear that before, the premise of that joke is all backed up by reporting. That's what Trump was doing. That's why I think Colbert is really coming to his own during the time of Trump. He's making people smarter about these issues while making them laugh. And then here, a little more on the various options. Again, this is all 100% accurate, right? Right on the screen, if you're watching it live, you'll see actually it has like the news clippings. This is from a New York Times article. The New York Times said that Donald Trump was given a range of choices in response to Iran's action with sending a rocket at one of our bases and occupying our compound. He picked the most extreme one because that's what Trump does. Here's clip number 2.
Trump's advisors went to Mar-a-Lago and military officials put the option of killing Soleimani, which they viewed as the most extreme response, on the menu they presented to President Trump. They didn't think he'd do it. They tacked on the choice of targeting General Soleimani to make other options seem reasonable. Okay, quick note to the generals. The only way Trump isn't going to order something on a menu is if it comes with vegetables. Let's see here. What do we got? What do we got? Ooh. Oh, I gotta say, the killing the Soleimani looks tempting. Comes on a bed of spinach. Can you hold that? No, then I'll have the chicken fried sanctions. Or, here's an even better idea. If you didn't want her to pick it, don't give it as an option. It's like your boyfriend saying, wait, why did you choose breakup? I only put that on there so you'd be more into the threesome idea. Which obviously is a joke.
So Donald Trump, when you hear that, and that's the truth, it was laid out for him by the generals. They gave various options. Trump picked the most extreme. Why? Because Donald Trump thought it would help him politically. What have we seen in the daily polling since that Rasmussen poll? If you follow Trump closely, you'll see that's the one he tweets and boasts about on Twitter when it gets over 50 or 52%. Well, before the strike, it was at 50%. Where is it today? And this is polling 2 days in a row after the strike, he's down to 48%. Yes, it's within the margin of error, but the point is he didn't get a bump that he thought he was going to get. Donald Trump expected America was going to rise up and forgive him for his racism and bigotry and sexism because he killed a general that 90% of America never even heard of before he did that, and now put Americans in harm's way. Does anyone out there actually think we are safer today than before that strike? We are not. We know Donald Trump knows he's not. They've elevated security at the White House, so he's fully, keenly aware of that. We're sending B-52s and 3,000 more troops to the Middle East. We are not safer. There's no doubt about it. But that doesn't stop Team Trump from going out there to try to gin up support for their base and continuing now this evolving story about it was an imminent threat. And if you keep wondering, why does it have to be an imminent threat? And we're going to talk about it more with Danny Savalas in the third hour. Because under U.S. law, a president cannot just kill members of other governments without getting congressional approval, or at least notifying them. You can do that with random terrorists who are not state actors, but when you're part of a country, you can't do that, unless, of course, it's an imminent threat. If this general was plotting to blow up Times Square or kill Americans at some big base in the Middle East that we knew about, that'd be different. Of course, you've got to take that person out. If it was going to stop the attack, not just to make yourself feel good. In this case, now the whole world of Trump is pivoting. Oh, it was an imminent attack within days or weeks, we're hearing now from the Secretary of Defense, Esper. Pompeo, same thing. They're backpedaling. They're talking about all the bad things Soleimani had done because they don't have the legal justification for this. So you have people like Nikki Haley, remember her, on Fox News. Listen to this garbage. Play clip number 3. This is just garbage.
You don't see anyone standing up for Iran. You're not hearing any of the Gulf members. You're not hearing China. You're not hearing Russia. The only ones that are mourning the loss of Soleimani are our Democrat leadership and our Democrat presidential candidates. No one else in the world, because they knew that this man had evil veins. They knew what he was capable of, and they saw the destruction and the lives lost based from his hands.
The Democratic candidates are mourning the loss of Soleimani. No, they're not. That's just a lie. But everything in Trump world is a lie. Everything is a lie. You can trust nothing from anyone named Donald Trump, anyone in that administration, anyone ever in that administration. They are the consummate liars. The White House press secretary today, Stephanie Grisham, was on Fox News upset that some people are questioning the intelligence, the U.S. intelligence they say are the basis for the attack. She said it was really unfortunate. Meanwhile, for 3 years, Trump has called our intelligence agencies the deep state. It just goes on TV and just lies like this. There's no limit to the lying of everyone in this administration. And in the bizarre world we live in now, Tucker Carlson is agreeing with us. We don't agree with Tucker Klansman. He agrees with us. Sometimes he makes sense. Rarely. I played a clip last night. Last night I played a clip from him on Friday slamming the attack and also talking about Rand Paul. Well, Tucker was on last night and did it again. And in this time, he actually went after what Stephanie Grisham is saying now. How do you trust the intelligence agencies? Because Tucker apparently is a believer. He's believing the garbage he's been spewing, that they're the deep state and you can't trust them. So Tucker goes, I believe this. How can we switch it now? And then he actually takes shots, not by name, at Pompeo and Mike Pence especially, because Pence was saying the Iranian Soleimani was involved in 9/11, which anytime anyone says anything's involved in 9/11 and they don't mean the actual hijackers or Saudi Arabia, they're just lying to you. They just want to justify another war. Here is Tucker Carlson from last night on this whole thing, and it could be a liberal talk show host doing it, but it's Tucker Carlson, and I'm glad because it means Trumpers are seeing it, and that's why Trump's numbers are not going up, because you have people like Rand Paul and Tucker Carlson cutting out Trump's legs because they don't want to have their children or grandchildren go to war for a liar like Trump. Here's clip number 4.
It's hard to remember now, but as recently as last week, most people didn't consider Iran an imminent threat. Iranian saboteurs were not committing acts of terror in our cities. Oh, but our leaders tell us they were about to any second, and that's why we struck first. What's so striking is how many people appear to accept this uncritically. Just the other day, you remember, our intel agencies were considered politically tainted and suspect. Certainly on this show they were, and will be for quite some time. And by the way, these are the same people who lied about Iraq's weapons of mass destruction way back in 2002, and by doing that, got us into an utterly pointless war that dramatically weakened our country. The people pushing conflict with Iran are the same people who did that. It seems like about 20 minutes ago, we were denouncing these very people as the deep state and pledging never to trust them again without verification. But now, for some reason, we do seem to trust them implicitly and completely. In fact, we believe whatever they tell us, no matter how outlandish. Iran did 9/11, they're telling us. Oh, okay. Didn't know that. 15 of the 19 hijackers were from Sunni Saudi Arabia. None were from Shiite Iran.
And he goes on from there. So, Trumpers are going to say it's only Democrats criticizing this. It's not. It's bipartisan. Tucker Carlson, one of Donald Trump's great friends in the media, as Donald Trump has called him, one of his great friends in the media, exact quote, is out there slamming this. And he went on to talk about, I don't want my son to die for a lie. And here's the thing. We don't know where this is going to go. I'm hoping it goes to minor little cyber war thing, perhaps, and no one gets killed on either side. You had Leon Panetta, though, former CIA director, saying we are now the closest in 40 years to actually war with Iran. Worse, you had the Iran's ambassador to the UN stating point blank that the killing of Soleimani was, quote, an act of war. And this morning, it was reported the Iran supreme leader has said he's directed direct attacks on American interests in the region. So we don't know how this is going to play out. Will it play out as small skirmishes? Will it be a full-scale war where we attack a nation of Iran that's 80 million people, which is 3 times the population of Iraq when we attacked them in 2003? It's unclear, but here's definitely certain. Here's 100% certain no matter what happens. 2 things are definite. First, any military action involving the U.S. will be fought not by the wealthy, not by the Trumps, but those from the lower and middle class in America. And second, given that our military is as diverse as America now, increasingly many in our military are in various communities and parts of these communities that Donald Trump is demonized, he is demeaned, and he's discriminated against. This is what's unique about this world we live in right now. We have not had this before. Now, the inequality in the military, that's long-standing. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted, I think summing it up perfectly, and Ilhan Omar as well, but Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted, war is a class conflict too. The rich and powerful who open war escape the consequences of their decisions, adding poignantly, it's not their children sent into the jaws of violence. It is often the vulnerable and the poor and working people who had little to say in the conflict who pay the price. The rich and powerful escaping consequences of war, as AOC points out, is nothing new. That's gone on during drafts before. Now we have voluntary military, but in the time of draft, much over and over documented. And you don't have to look any further than Donald J. Trump, who used his privilege to get of serving in Vietnam to defer from the draft. First from college deferments, which a lot of people did, but then this fabricated tale of a bone spur. And to remind people, Donald Trump in college played football, tennis, and squash. He even got a full physical examination 2 years before leaving college, which found no medical impediment to him serving the military. Suddenly, when he gets out of college and his college deferments are over, guess what? His personal lawyer writes a letter saying he's got bone spurs. So Donald Trump, like many wealthy people, got out of the draft. But now, even with the volunteer military we have, AOC is 100% right. The lower and middle class of our nation will bear the brunt of war. A recent study by the Council on Foreign Relations examined the demographics of those serving in our military. The report notes most members of our military come from middle-class neighborhoods, with nearly 20% coming from families who are actually impoverished. How many of the affluent, wealthy families? Only 18% of those making over $80,000 a year, from families making over $80,000 a year, are in our military. They didn't go further. We don't know. Top 1%, I imagine it's a handful of people at best. In addition, it's not just the service. It's remarkable, but a 2016 study titled Two Americas of Military Sacrifice conclude it's not just those who serve, but those who get killed in our military, serving our nation, disproportionately come from poorer parts of the country and from lower socioeconomics. And I imagine that is going to be because if you had some money and went to college, you can go in as an officer, like a second lieutenant. But those coming in just with high school education or less are the men and women put on the front line. The men put on the front line. Now, that's happened before. It happened at the time of draft. But again, in our volunteer military, we have seen this exact same thing. It has not changed. Like, in fact, one quote from the report right here jumps out. Today, unlike World War II, the Americans who die or who are wounded in war are disproportionately come from poorer parts of the country. That's who fights our wars. But there's something else unique about Trump. Those who fight our wars are also from the very communities Donald Trump has demonized and demeaned and used the power of his government to discriminate against. And let me go through it a little bit here to give you a sense of where our military is today. It's a little over 1 million people standing army. A recent study found that 43% of enlisted recruits who are men and 56% of women are Hispanic or a racial minority, with blacks and Hispanics each making up about 16% each, so about 32%. In our military now are black and Hispanic, but overall, a little over 40% of our military is now minorities. In fact, a Pew study from 2019 found Hispanics are the fastest growing minority population in the military. Yet Donald Trump has made demeaning Hispanics and Latinos the number one thing of his campaign. He literally came down an escalator in 2015, kicked off his campaign by lying and saying Mexico is sending rapists and drug dealers to our country. Since then, he's continued to gin up fears and stoke hate against Latinos, saying that there are an invasion of our country, that Hispanic immigrants who are undocumented are thugs and animals. It's not surprising that studies show Hispanic Americans are concerned and they feel unsafe in their own country because of Trump's rhetoric. Yet they've signed up to serve in our military. Same thing with African Americans. Donald Trump's demonization of leading visible African Americans also often further the worst stereotypes. And I think by design. For example, him attacking Congressman Maxine Waters as low IQ, and others like Jay-Z and Don Lemon and other leading black Americans as dumb and unintelligent. You could say, well, that's just Trump. Or you could say what I believe, that he is parroting white supremacists' talking points, that white people are inherently intellectually superior to black, and black people are intellectually inferior to whites. Donald Trump is a white supremacist, so I have no doubt when he says this stuff, it's not because he knows the literature of white supremacists, it's what he feels. It's who he is. You know, who can forget in July 2019, Trump going after Congressman Elijah Cummings, the late congressman, the great congressman, and saying things about his district in Baltimore being rat and rodent infested, where no human being would want to live. Playing on century-old stereotypes about blacks, as studies have shown, about being dirty and crime-ridden. But it's not just about race and ethnicity that Donald Trump has demonized, yet people still serve in our military. Right now, there are over 5,000 Muslim Americans serving proudly in our military, over 5,000. Yet Donald Trump called for a total and complete shutdown on Muslims coming to this country during his campaign, said Islam hates us. Still, Muslim Americans I know have joined the military to serve our nation. And it's not just in language. Trump's policies, look what he's done. He has used government policy to discriminate against the LGBT community with his transgender ban, his ban on transgender Americans who want to serve in our military. You know, there are currently 13,000, estimates are, transgender Americans serving in our military. They're serving proudly and effectively, but that's not good for Trump. He had to stop it. So he put a government-mandated discriminatory plan to ban them from the military, sending a message to our fellow Americans that it is okay to discriminate against the LGBT community. Gilad, one of the world's largest LGBT community advocates at the time, said Trump's ban was morally wrong, unpatriotic, and compromises the readiness of our military. Yet still, people from these communities are joining and want to join. So I don't know if we're going to go to war or not. But I can tell you, those who are fighting are not going to be named Trump. They're not going to be the children of wealthy donors. They're going to be our middle and lower class bearing the brunt of it. And add to that, a diverse group of Americans who will be the first to answer the call for our nation, the first to answer the call to service, the same call that Donald Trump evaded through privilege. Yet Donald Trump, the draft dodger, loves to play army with other people's children. And that's where he's heading us now. I don't know if we're going to go to a full war. I hope we don't. I hope cooler heads prevail and they could do their little skirmishes over cyber stuff. But as I said last night, the GOP presidents give us wars. They also give us tax cuts for the wealthy, but they give us wars. Democratic presidents give us Medicare, the ACA, Social Security, programs that help our fellow Americans. That's where we are. It's that simple, my friend. So, and one other thing, and I can't prove this, but Dick Cheney, we know Cheney profited off his ties to Halliburton, the Iraq War. Does anyone out there doubt for a second, if Trump and his corrupt children can profit off a war with Iran, they would be doing it? They're probably planning it now. This is what Trump is about. This is what the whole family, the corrupt family, is about. So I just want to make it clear, because I don't think enough is talked about. Last night we had Malcolm Nance on, and I shared the clip. If you didn't listen on Twitter, we took a clip about the stress and pain to families when a loved one is sent and deployed overseas into a war zone. And that doesn't get covered enough. The anguish and stress it causes. You know, the fear of someone knocking on the door you don't recognize to tell you your loved one has been killed, or a phone number on your phone you don't recognize and you fear it's the Department of Defense telling you about something horrible happened to a loved one. And Malcolm shared that, and I'm so glad he did, because there's a human cost already to this. As 3,000 more American soldiers are deployed, and those families are deployed with them, not literally, but here. And they have the pain and stress of having a loved one for Trump's wars. Trump will get your children and grandchildren killed, and he doesn't care. Trump cares about one thing, Donald Trump. It's that simple. So let's take a break. I'd love to hear from you. You're my guest. We got a lot of things I want to cover tonight. We got Danny Savalas in the third hour to break down. We'll talk about the War Powers Act and what is the limits of a president's power to get us into a war, and can Congress stop Donald Trump in any way? And we'll talk about impeachment and Mitch McConnell today and John Bolton and all that with Danny when he comes on. Right now, you're my guest. I'd love to hear what you have to think about Donald Trump's drumbeat to war and who's going to actually serve in our nation. And I don't know how you change it. I just don't. 866-997-4748. Be right back after this on the Dean Obeidallah Show.
The Dean Obeidallah Show.
Voting is the most important civil right